All right, guys. So on this episode of As the Democrat Party Turns, because right now all of politics is basically a soap opera, right? Like the Republican Party is like As the World Turns, and the Democrat Party is like what's the other one called? Like General Hospital or Guiding Light. Those old soap operas that my parents used to watch in the middle of the day. But really, that's what it is. Now, this time we have AOC calling out Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, basically saying that they need to be replaced. The Democrat Party needs new leadership, is what she said. And AOC's current feud with the establishment Democrats is just another example of the infighting that is going on right now within the Democrat Party. Now, this is coming amidst calls from progressives to force a House vote on Medicare for all. That's the big thing that the progressives are concerned about right now during this pandemic. They want Medicare for all. So a lot of progressives are actually coming out the AOC, because the squad and all the progressives that they've tried to get into the House have not forced a floor vote on Medicare for all. And essentially, they are blaming that on the establishment. Before we get in that, my name is Greg Foreman, and you're watching A Black Conservative Perspective. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share A Black Conservative Perspective, aka a leftist worst nightmare. You can also follow me on Twitter at GForemanBCP. Let's get it. All right, guys. So listen up at this interview that AOC did, in which she basically calls for Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer to be replaced and new leadership to be within the Democrat Party.
Are you ready to say Pelosi and Schumer need to go?
I mean, I think so. I mean, and the question is, like, this year, for example, the hesitancy that I have is that I want to make sure that if we're pointing people in a direction, that we have a plan. And my concern, and this I acknowledge as a failing, as something that we need to sort out, is that there isn't a plan. How do we fill that vacuum? Because if you create that vacuum, there are so many nefarious forces at play to fill that vacuum with something even worse. I do think that we need new leadership in the Democratic Party. I think one of the things that I have struggled with, I think that a lot of people struggle with, is the internal dynamics of the House has made it such that there's very little option for succession, if you will, and I think that one could just, I think it's easy for someone to say, oh, well, why don't you run? But the House is extraordinarily complex, and I'm not ready. It can't be me. I know that I couldn't do that job. And so even conservative members of the party who think Nancy Pelosi is far too liberal for them don't necessarily have any viable alternatives, which is why whenever there's a challenge, it kind of collapses. And that is, I think, the result of just many years of power being concentrated in leadership with a lack of, real grooming of the next generation of leadership.
So I don't know about you guys, but I don't agree with AOC on much, but I do agree with her in the premise that there definitely needs to be new Democrat leadership in the party. However, it ain't her, right? It ain't the squad. It ain't AOC, Ayanna Pressley, all the super woke, far left, progressive / socialist, communist in that party. That's not what we need, because these guys are way too far left on the social spectrum, and Americans are just not going to get behind it, right? Like, you have these people out here calling for schools to be renamed. You need pronouns in every single profile. They're pushing the race conversation. They are supporting these protests and riots in the streets. They're doing things that Americans just cannot get behind. What they really need to understand is that this country is socially conservative. It just is, right? And for a reason. People want to conserve the values of freedom and liberty that we were founded on, and we are by nature skeptical of government, and that goes all the way back to our founding. I mean, there's a reason why 1776 is basically the slogan of the Patriot Party, aka the populist right of Trump supporters right now. AOC plus the squad represents the extremes of what we don't want our government to be. Now, she talks about how she doesn't think there's anybody that can step in and fill that void. And I disagree, right? What the Democrats need to embrace is somebody that's more reasonable, like a Tulsi Gabbard type. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard has been picking up W's. Now, I know that she elected not to rerun, so I think she's going to be kind of out of politics for a little bit here, as she's not going to be in the House moving forward. But she demonstrates kind of somebody that conservatives could potentially get behind on the Democratic side. I mean, she has introduced a bill to kind of reform Title IX in a sense of protecting women in sports from having to play with transgender women, aka men. She's also introduced a abortion bill that would protect fetuses. She's also called for the pardoning of Edward Snowden and Julian Assange, and she's also called for the repeal of the Patriot Act, right? These are all things and policies that conservatives can get behind. And a lot of conservatives have stated how much they like Tulsi and how reasonable they think she is. Now, she does have some progressive economic policies. However, right, my whole point is that because she's reasonable, because she's willing to meet us in the middle on some things and maybe give up some things, people are like, okay, maybe she's somebody that, you know, I can support in some ways, and somebody that I can actually listen to and take seriously in politics. That's the type of person in leadership that the Democrats need. Somebody like Tulsi, who's anti-establishment. She also served in the military. I mean, she's really the whole package. I'm just very, very, very impressed by some of the things that she stood up for in the midst of what's going on right now in our country. I mean, you know, she seems like she's not afraid to try to agree with the president on certain things. I think she also agreed with the president on repealing Section 230. She just has cojones, right? She's willing to go against the establishment and the party lines for things that she believes in. And at the end of the day, I like politicians that are principled, right? Like Tulsi's one of them. Rand Paul, you know, I like him a lot. Obviously, you know, there's people on both sides of the aisle that I think are principled that really represent where this country should go. But AOC is not one of those, and the squad is not one of those. Besides that, you know, in this interview, like I said, I do believe she's right. The Democrats do need new leadership. But, you know, AOC just sounds really, really, really weak in this interview, right? She's talking about how I'm not ready. I can't do it. I can't do that. You know, it just kind of sounds like you're sitting here just blaming them for everything and not using the power that you have to try to make the change that you want to see, right? And I guess that's kind of good for us that AOC is so weak, because otherwise, if she actually was competent, then she may actually be able to get some policy changes in this country, which may not necessarily be good for the direction that we want the country to go in. You know, this is just another example of the infighting that's going on within the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party is already fractured, right? So traditionally speaking, Republicans come out and they vote in a block, right? They may not necessarily agree with everything the party wants, but we show up to every single election. We always vote, right? We don't get frustrated and throw fits and say, I don't agree on everything that you want, therefore I'm not going to vote for you. I'm just going to sit it out. On the other hand, the Democrats are historically fractured in the sense that there's a lot of people on the left that if the candidate that is up for election or re-election, if they don't agree with them 100%, they just won't vote for them. They just won't show out and vote. Right? And already the young people in the Democrat Party are notorious for not coming out and vote. That's why Bernie Sanders can't get nominated. I mean, besides the DNC basically rigging the media against him. But another reason why he can't win or get a Democrat nomination is because they don't vote. They do a lot of talking, but they don't do any voting. right? And that's also why you see people like Nancy Pelosi, who everybody despises, right? The far left despises her, the populist right despises her, the establishment right despises her. Basically, what, 75%, 80% of this country, they despise her. They don't even like her. She's a representative from California, a super liberal state. However, she keeps getting reelected because she is bought and sold, and because she's gained so much power over the years that she's become so entrenched in politics, it is damn near impossible to actually get her out of office. And this presents a problem in our politics that AOC, if you was really serious about trying to change the power structure, you could agree on something like establishing term limits, right? And try to work towards something like that, something that the right agrees upon. I'm pretty sure some people on the left even agree upon that, right? If you could work on something like term limits, right, so that it's hard for people like Nancy Pelosi to sit in Washington for 30 years just because they're bought and sold by big corporations. If you could do something like that, or work with the right and people who agree to implement something like that, that could be your way of fighting it. But like I said, I don't expect AOC to do anything like that because she's incompetent. She's incompetent. She's weak. And every time I hear her talk, you know, I'm just like, wow, you literally are the worst politician ever. You're great at raising grassroots money. You're great at talking. You're great at getting a lot of super liberal young people to get behind you, but you're terrible at getting things done in Washington and being a politician, right? So this right here is just another example of the weakness of AOC and how fractured the Democrat Party is. And like I said, both parties right now are really going through some infighting that will shape the dynamics of politics into the 2020s. So it is going to be very interesting to see what happens moving forward. But this is just a little piece of kind of the sediment that's going on in the Democrat Party. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.